All right, welcome to the Proxy. My name is Phil Morse, and we're coming to you here live from CatchMark Studio in downtown Whitehall. I'm here to be your proxy by asking my guest questions on a topic that you may have regarding our topic. You can submit questions as well on YouTube, and then this conversation hopefully can contribute to your thoughts on this topic, and because an examined opinion leads to discernment. On this episode, we have Melanie Coon here with me. Thanks again, Melanie, for being here. She's from Oceana County. She works in the Oceana County Clerk's office as a deputy clerk. And she's going to share her expertise and perspective on the elections and the processes in elections. Now, thank you again for being on my podcast, Melanie. Please know that I try to think of questions that will help people understand this topic, and in some cases ask questions that people who don't necessarily agree with you in your perspective that they might have. It doesn't mean that I endorse or oppose anything that you say or have viewpoints in that way, or that I had these questions for myself. Okay. Audience, please make sure you subscribe and click the little bell to get notified whenever we have another 5 o'clock showing of this episode of the Proxy. I can only learn so much about the topic being covered. There may be some of you in the audience that know a whole lot more about this topic that can formulate great questions for me to ask our guests today. And if it's a reasonable question and we have time to ask it, I will ask it. And then I will see them up on my screen that's behind you, and then we'll go from there. So I'm looking forward to this. My hope is to build bridges and to tear down walls. All right. So, Melanie, again, thanks for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what gives you credibility to talk about this topic.
I was very fortunate to come into the county clerk's office under Clerk Rebecca J. Griffin, who had immense knowledge and experience in elections. And so I've been at the courthouse for a little over 18 and a half years. And I spent a lot of it with her. So it was more like job shadowing. So I learned a lot of that. And I have participated in probably about 30 elections.
Okay. All right. At what different levels? County level and what else?
We have local school elections. Townships can put an election on by themselves if they'd like, but they generally wait till August or November.
But your role has always been at the county level.
Oh, yes. Okay. I have never worked a township. I should work a township.
Sure. Right? That'd be a good experience, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to talk first of all about before election day, kind of the lead up to elections, to the election day. So what are the roles that people play in elections? For example, county clerk, township clerk, deputy clerk, what are the different titles and roles that people have that contribute to the election or to the election day?
The local clerks generally get the proposals situated for the township. The school proposals come to the county clerk. So it's a lot of gathering. Depending on which election in the year, whether it's May, August, or November, you gather affidavits and proposal wording for your ballot. So you got to start there. In election years where there is a state or a federal election, like the county clerk has to do training at least 2 times within that year. She is also responsible for the canvass board. There are 4 members, 2 of each of the national parties. And she keeps them, she arranges new suggestions when their terms are up, but she also has to schedule them in for organizational meetings and things of the kind. And once you have everything gathered and you have everybody on board, they, of course, have to appoint their precinct inspectors by a certain time. And it's very difficult to obtain somebody that will work an election. So if there are people out there listening that have any interest, they should definitely contact the county clerk's office to find out the next time they can train. We have to create the ballot. We have to proof it. The election commission, which is made up of the probate judge, the treasurer, and the county clerk, they proof the ballot. And then that will go to the state level, and it's proof there. And then it will go to the printers, and they do a light proof before they print. We have to do testing on all the machines public accuracy testing prior to the election.
Who requires that?
The state.
Okay.
We contract with a company to come in and test all that equipment. So that has to be kept. All of the testing materials has to be kept, just like the ballots.
Okay. How about what's the timeline that those ballots have to be completed and proofed and ready to go?
We have to have AV ballots to the township clerks.
AV?
AV ballot. We have to have ballots to them so they can start issuing AV 45 days prior to the election.
And AV stands for absentee, right?
Absent voter ballot.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. How about the township clerk's role? What's their role?
They do a lot of gathering as well. I think the main struggle they have is finding a precinct inspector to work. Some of the jurisdictions are getting very lucky, and they have a good group of people they can call on, but I know a lot of our townships struggle. They don't really do much with the ballot until we give that to them.
Okay.
But as far as absent voter ballots go, was it up to 100 days? There was a very large number of days prior to an election you could request an AV. And so they take in all of the applications and they have to enter those into a state system, the qualified voter file. And so they're logging all of the requests, they're logging all of the ballots that are going out. And supplies, they've got to get supplies for their inspectors and their machines. I am probably not doing this justice. The township clerks work very hard.
Sure.
I have just not actually been at that level, so I don't know all of their duties, but I do know they work hard.
Do you know, is there anything else that we're missing as far as people that have roles in this process? I mean, Secretary of State at the state level.
Oh, certainly.
What's her or his role, depending on who it is?
Well, we generally only work with a couple people in the bureau. And I mean, we call them all the time with questions, and we can certainly do that. Anybody can do that. But we don't, I don't know all of her duties. I'm sure there are many. But they have to approve ballots for all 83 counties and all of the local jurisdictions within there. So they're pretty busy doing a lot of that.
So after the local county clerk is done with the ballot proofing, that she sends that or he sends that off to the Secretary of State first.
Mm-hmm. The Bureau of Elections will, sorry, I know they're together now, but they will look those over and let us know anything that they see on there. Or if we get an approval, then we can go to print.
And so let's just clarify that. So the Bureau of Elections is a part of the Secretary of State's office?
Yes, under that umbrella.
Okay. What sorts of things do they do to prepare for Election Day as the Election Day is coming? Like it's imminent, it's in 2 days, it's the Monday before, let's say, or the Friday before. Anything, or in your office, anything else to point out besides what you've already covered?
We get a lot of emails from the state indicating that they are available for any issues that we may have with programming, because the electronic poll book does have to be downloaded after 4 p.m. on Monday prior to an election. So we get a lot of we get some encouragement emails from them, just letting us know they're there for questions, and I can't even imagine. The 2 days before an election is kind of like the calm, because we've already
You've done all the work.
We've already gathered it prior to we get to a point where we just kind of wait.
Okay. How does the absentee ballot process work?
Anyone can, since Proposal 18.3, anyone can get an absent voter ballot for no reason. Anybody can apply for that. You can also get on a permanent AV list with your township clerk. It's something that's kept track of in the qualified voter file. And you have to fill out an application. It doesn't have to be the state's form. It can just be on a plain lined paper. We have to have your name and your signature. And once they send that to the township clerk, they're going to check in QVF that the signature matches. And then once they have their ballots, they are going to put it on all the appropriate envelopes and send it to the person. And then they just need to get it to the poll by 8 p.m. on Election Day.
So somebody applying for an absentee ballot does not have to show their ID?
They do not have to show their ID. Their signature is checked at least twice. It's checked by the local clerk as well as the precinct inspectors on election day.
Okay. Can a person turn in an absentee ballot, die before election day, and their vote still count?
If they die before 7 o'clock on election day, they are marked as rejected. Unfortunately, that ballot does not count.
Okay. How do absentee ballots from military personnel work?
That is very exciting because with this last election and Proposal 2, they're really trying to speed those up. When we first started move ballots for the UOCAVA voters, military and overseas civilians, it was kind of slow. They had to contact us. They can contact us by letter, email, phone call, and we had to mail a lot of the materials to them. Then they got to a point where we could email the ballot to them, but it had to be returned by regular mail. As of January 1st, 2024, they will be able to return those ballots, military and overseas civilians, by email.
Okay. So do you think this change that Proposal 2 brought about it makes it easier for you guys?
I think it's exciting. When we first started that, we did not have a lot of military voters. I know we have a lot of people in the military from Oceana County, and I would love, for them to get the opportunity to vote.
Right.
But it was a very slow process.
Okay. I mean, do you find that may open things up for potential fraud, that they can email that in?
That, I think there's going to be a lot of training done on that. I feel fraud is, if somebody really puts their mind to it, I think they're going to go after it and they're going to achieve it. I would hope that we have enough checks and balances in place with a signature, and we of course have the address that they've given us. So if it's coming from a different location, if the email is different, we can certainly ask questions about that.
Okay, so let's shift to election day. Tell us about the process for those who vote in person on election day.
Well, from my experience, when I walk in, I go to the table to complete an application to vote. I then take that to the table with the electronic poll book, and I hand them the application to vote with my ID. Once they have verified that I am in the system and I don't have any questions in the electronic poll book, they're going to give me the appropriate ballot and then send me on my way to the voting booth. And from the voting booth, I will then go to another station with the tabulator and put my ballot in.
So tell me a little bit more about that electronic voting. What'd you call it? Electronic voting?
Tabulator? E-poll book,
Okay.
Electronic poll book.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
When I started, we used paper poll books. And so e-poll books are pretty extraordinary, to be honest. The qualified voter file that the state maintains, and we do maintenance on as well, downloads a file that has all of the qualified voters for that election that we put on a laptop. That laptop is not hooked to the internet. No one can access it that way. I know recently in Kent County they had someone access the e-poll book using a USB, and I'm hoping that they'll come up with some kind of way to make that, a lot harder to do, because there is going to be open USBs on that laptop. But no, it's very, it's really fun because it's got, once you get your name, you can issue them a regular ballot. If they're a challenged voter, if you're processing AVs, there are buttons for all of those things in there. If they vote and they've marked the wrong candidate, and they bring that ballot back to you, we can spoil it in there and issue a new one.
So the poll book is a list of all the potential voters,
Yes.
essentially, and it's just on an Excel sheet or some sort of spreadsheet. Is that right? Or some sort of document that organizes the list of voters?
It's all electronic. The state developed the qualified voter file to keep track of all of our voters, and then we just download a protected file onto a protected USB.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think that makes sense. So is it required to fill out an application? You went through the process and you said you fill out an application. Is that required?
Yes, by Michigan statute, you have to fill out an application, whether it's for an AV ballot or an in-person ballot. You have to complete that application.
Okay, is it a law to require an ID?
It is. I had an interesting
receive a
story
ballot.
about that. At the last Asparagus Festival, I was approached by a young man collecting signatures to require ID at the polling place. And I had to inform him that that's already a law. So I wasn't quite sure why he was collecting petitions for it. But if they don't have an ID with them, they can fill out an affidavit of voter not in possession of picture identification, and they'll still be allowed to vote as long as they are in the poll book.
Okay, so then technically speaking, they can vote without having an ID.
They can,
Okay.
but they have to be in the poll book. So it's going to have
Right.
an address that's going to, whatever they put on here, it should be matching that. If it's not, we're going to ask about it. The signature should match.
Now, let's get into that. What if the signature doesn't match?
We do have the right to question the signature. They have a very detailed guide that the state puts out and shows how signatures could differ. For instance, if the signature we have is printed and the one we got from the voter is written, then they should look similar. Or if age, if someone registered a long time ago, their signature is probably going to look different from then. But if there's anything that is really obvious, like it looks nothing like the signature, we have to contact the voter and let them know that we're going to need some additional identification.
Okay. So you can do that. The township clerks have the authority.
They do.
To say, hey, your vote's not going to count until you verify that
Right.
that you are who you say you are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can so as far as if somebody has their ID
Yes.
on them and they say, yeah, I have my ID, but I don't want to show it.
The Michigan statute also goes into detail about that. If they tell you they have it on their person and they won't show it to you, they cannot get a ballot.
Interesting.
Without showing it to you.
Okay.
They're not going to get a ballot.
Is it? Can people leave with their ballot? So they get they go in, they fill out the application, they show their ID, hand the application, they get their ballot. Can people leave the building with their ballot?
Not on election day. They cannot do that.
Okay.
The security of the ballots needs to keep them. We need to keep them in the polling location. If someone came in, started to vote, decided they really needed to look something up, we would spoil that ballot, and then when they came back, give them a new one.
Okay. And what's the purpose of that?
Some people, when they come in to vote, truly don't know the candidates that are on the ballot.
But what's the purpose of why they can't bring it with them?
It's a security issue. We can't have them going back and forth because all of our ballots are numbered. They've got numbered stubs on them, and the township clerks have to account for every one of those ballots.
So it's a tracking issue. Okay. If someone, let's say now we're getting into the ballot box. We're actually in, by ourselves, writing, down who we want to vote for. If someone votes straight ticket, does the straight ticket part. Well, you know what? Let's maybe just, for anybody that's listening that isn't sure what a straight ticket ballot is or what that means, can you just get into that a little bit? What's a straight ticket?
All of the national parties are printed in the beginning of the ballot. And if you mark Republican, Democrat, U.S. taxpayers, that is going to give a vote to every candidate on that ballot from that party.
Okay. So you can fill in the little oval and it will be everybody in the Libertarian Party or the Republican Party, Democrat Party. Okay.
Right.
So now let's say somebody votes Democrat, straight ticket. But then on the ballot under, let's say, President of the United States, they vote for the Republican. How is that? Let's say they just weren't thinking or whatever. How is that handled?
If that was an accident and they chose the wrong candidate, they would want to spoil the ballot and get a new one. But otherwise, you're fine with a straight you can vote a straight party and then go down through the ballot and vote for a candidate from any party in the remaining races. And it will count anybody that is within that the straight ticket. They will give them a vote, but then if you switch to Democrat on one or two races, they're going to get the vote. It's going to override it.
Okay, interesting. So what keeps a track of who voted?
We, when we order ballots, our office, the county clerk's office, we know how many they have. And so they have to log all of the ones that are issued prior to Election Day, all of the AVs, and take those to the polling location. They have to account for every one of those ballots in a ballot summary at the end of the day. It takes into account their starting numbers, ending numbers, affidavit ballots, AV ballots, all kinds of spoiled ballots, and they have to enter all of that information and balance to zero at the end of the night.
Okay. Let's move on to ballot boxes. Are there any ballot boxes in Oceana County where you live and work? And that, as a matter of fact, where I live as well. And what are your thoughts on them too?
You know, in a small community, they seem to be fairly safe. I know, like the City of Hart, they have an excellent slot in their door.
They have a ballot box.
I couldn't get into that slot to take out anything from anyone that somebody else put in there, but it easily allows me to put my ballot in there. I know we have a handful of townships that have those same slots. One clerk, I believe her ballot box is actually housed inside of her garage, but we have never really had a problem with that. I hate to say that because maybe we will now, but I know Kent County did. And so the state has really detailed the regulations on those. You know, you have to have lighting. You have to go check it in large counties like every day, I think.
Okay. So people could actually, I mean, at least formally, they could use their garage. That's what you said? They could use their own?
As long as it's a secured location, yes.
Okay. Now, some ballots didn't arrive at the polling place until early the next morning. Like there was reports in Wayne County that it was like 4 a.m. before some of the ballots came in. What do you think are possible reasons for that?
I would guess that
and the reason I say possible reason, you don't know for sure because you don't live there. You didn't know,
no.
So it's just all from what you've heard.
Right. I would guess in the last two major election years, our numbers have increased dramatically. And I can't even imagine how many ballots Wayne runs through. So they're going to have a lot of AV counting facilities that are processing like 3 times the ballots that they have been. And they've got to complete that process and go through all of the sealing and the paperwork before they can then bring that in to the clerk.
The sealing?
The state requires that pretty much anything you put election material in has a state seal on it. It's
I see. As a seal.
So no one could get into it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you think it's a reason? It's not something that you think automatically that meant that there was fraud, or it's just a time thing. There just wasn't enough time to get to it, and end up being 4 a.m. when they got to it.
Even in our smaller county, I know that we've been processing an immense number of ballots, and it takes longer than you think it does.
What time do the results usually get completed in Oceana County, where they're sent off to? Well, the results go to what, Secretary of State?
They do go to the Secretary of State. We had to hand type them into the computer and email them.
And then, you look at the news, right? The news tracker says, okay, 3 out of whatever precincts or however many, have reported. They get that information from each county clerk's website, probably.
They, yes, I think a lot of the TV stations do. Sometimes they used to call us a lot, but the results come in so fast to our office now because of all the electronic poll books and no longer using paper, that we're basically processing from 10, 11. We're processing until about 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. I just think of that word electronic. There's a lot of people out there that may be even listening right now that makes them really leery. Whenever you hear electronic, you hear connected to the internet, you hear, Dominions, machines, anything like that. It makes them go, well, hang on a second. That's going to open a door for fraud potentially. What's your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. There are a lot of scams out there. So the state works diligently to come up with regulations that we have to meet, as far as firewalls using specific software, two-factor authentication. They have a lot of that in place. For instance, I know one time we needed to get some additional information for the format of a ballot, and they sent me the USB. It was sent UPS, so we could track it. They wouldn't email it to me or give me any of that information over the phone.
Wow. And that came from who?
That came from Election Source.
Okay. So, getting into Dominion machines, then I spoke on that briefly. Does Oceana County use Dominion machines?
We do.
Okay. And are there other counties in Michigan that use them?
64.
Okay, 64 out of 83 counties use
Yes.
Dominion machines. Okay, what's your take on Dominion machines?
We sat through demonstrations of all three when we chose these last ones. There's also a Hart brand and ES&S. I had to look that up because I was curious who used the other machines. And Hart has 11 counties, I believe it is, and ES&S has 7. So Dominion they've got most of the state. In my case, it's very easy to use. The software that we use to provide, put in the candidate information, and it's very easy to use. The machines, they keep well maintained. They have a team that's available on election day. There's one person usually assigned to our county, I think maybe 2, and they've got extra machines in their vehicle. So if they get a call from any one of our 17 jurisdictions, they can go there and switch out the machine or fix a jam immediately.
Okay. So, you've heard the reports that Dominion machine information can be swapped, can be changed. That was the House, I think on the House floor back in 2020, I think it was 2021, but about the 2020 election, they said that they demonstrated on the House floor that the votes could be flipped. Thoughts on that?
I know we had an issue in Michigan with something similar to that, and it was human error. It was a programming issue, and so I'm not saying people can't get into those machines. Maybe there are people out there. I think that the safeguards we have in place for what we deal with, they have to account for every ballot, and if they don't, we're sending them back. They have to have everything listed, and it has to match. Mm-hmm. I know Dominion services a lot of other countries as well. And so, I couldn't speak to the security measures they put in place for that. Mm-hmm. But I know in our particular county, the computer that we format ballots on is not hooked to the internet. Everything is on compact flash drives or USBs. And we are told that none of it gets hooked to the internet.
Okay. And when you say we are told, that means you mean township clerks say that they never hook them up to the internet?
Right.
Okay. I've heard that sometimes there are tabulating errors. What would cause a tabulating error? So there's. Can you tell us a little? You said the tabulation machines. You talked about those. We're still talking about election day stuff.
Yes.
Tell the audience and me a little bit more about what the tabulators do. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but just to be sure. And then what kind of errors can happen there?
The tabulator is, I hate to simplify it, but it's a big calculator. Uh-huh. It's all it really is doing. It has a read head in there, and it's looking for those completed boxes. They have to be completed. I think it's 40% for the vote to count.
What's supposed to be completed 40%?
If they use the ovals, the oval is supposed to be completed up to 40%. Okay. Otherwise, it won't count the vote.
I see. Okay.
But the tabulator, which maybe it's never happened to you, but I know it's happened to me. When I go up there with my secrecy sleeve on my ballot, the tabulator sometimes tugs at your ballot, and it's running it through rollers. So there's generally, if it's very humid and the ballots swell, you can get jams. Okay. Which that puts a stop to your processing. We're going to have to call the service person to come for that a lot of the time. Sometimes we can clear them ourselves. and they just have to be very careful about the screen on the machine to make sure a ballot hasn't been double counted.
Okay. So, one thing that I heard in 2022 in that election was there was a lot of tabulation errors. I think it was Kent County or jams, and people were pretty upset that things were taking so long. That's just more, it has nothing to do with integrity of the count of the vote. That's more just a convenience thing.
It's, yeah. They had a lot of jamming, I believe, during that issue, and they were just waiting for repair people. But they have so many machines in Kent County that to get somebody, on site every time, it's not always a quick fix. But those machines sit on a station, and there is a security box. So if you're not able to put your ballot into the tabulator, it can be placed in the auxiliary bin, which is a steel box right in front of it.
I've seen that.
And then they open that with 2 precinct inspectors from opposing parties and then run them through if they have to do that.
Okay. All right. So I have a question. I'm excited that somebody interacted on the chat. Raise Everything says, I'm able to complete many government tasks online now. How far off are we from being able to vote online? So this is kind of the opposite perspective. It sounds like Raise Everything has. Some people want paper only, paper ballots. No, not even connected to the internet at all, or not, on a computer at all, electronic, nothing. But it looks like Raise Everything may be advocating for voting online. What's your thoughts on that?
From my perspective, I would find that really fun and quite amazing. Good time saver. However, the state of Michigan is, they're really particular about their security. I've been told for years now that Michigan is actually more strict than many surrounding states. And so I don't see them doing that right away. They're still, perfecting what we're doing currently with our electronic poll books and their auditing systems. Yeah, I don't see them doing that anytime soon, but I'm not saying they won't.
Sure. Hey, and just thanks, Raise Everything, for the question. Anybody else, you can put a question in the chat, and you can actually do it anonymously as well if you log out. And you just have to log out of your account, your Google account, and then you might have to get back into this video somehow, or this recording. But then you can actually ask a question in an anonymous way. If you have any other questions about Election Day or before Election Day or at what I'm about to ask too after Election Day, now's a great time to ask. So now after Election Day, we talked about before and now on Election Day. How about after Election Day? Where are the ballots stored? The hand, where they actually physically, paper ballots, where are those stored? Those
are stored in approved ballot containers on site at the townships.
Okay. And are they behind in a safe? Are they stored in that way, or?
They, a lot of the townships, I believe, do have secured locked areas, but the approved containers have to be in good condition. They have to be sealed properly so no one can get in there. The corners, the flaps, nothing can be open so anyone could get in it. So the container itself is supposed to be the vault.
Okay.
The state they're very rigid about that as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So how long do those ballots have to be stored for? For how long?
The state and federal ballots are stored for 22 months. Generally in their containers, they not only have ballots, but they have applications to vote. They've got all their test deck information. They've got blank ballots, and those things inside have different retention.
Okay. So. And then again, after the election, what audits are in place, safeguards to make sure that things are on the up and up?
Since I have worked in the clerk's office, I think we've seen maybe 3 different types of audits, and they've, I think, found one they like now. They do procedural and ballot counts.
Who's they?
The state. The state will run their software to randomly select jurisdictions within the state of Michigan, all 83 counties, however many townships, and they will assign them to do a procedural audit or a hand count audit for the ballots, or some lucky people get to do both.
Mm. So when they do that, is that by township, is that by precinct, or is that the whole county? Could the whole county be audited?
They don't generally do the whole county. It usually is a precinct.
Okay. All right. So there's reports of people receiving multiple absentee ballots in the mail. Actually, some people I talked to myself have said that they received multiple absentee ballots in the mail. What do you think happened there?
Personally, I think it's a terminology issue. I think they're getting multiple applications in the mail. There are a lot of organizations that try and further voting rights that will mail out an application. You could get up to 6, you could get a ton of applications. They're not the actual ballot. If someone were to receive 2 ballots, they should immediately report that to the county clerk.
Okay, that's a good distinction there. So there's what they may be receiving is just the application itself.
Yes.
Okay, and is that a law? So people talked about how our Secretary of State in 2020 sent out a lot of absentee ballots. That was actually the applications.
That was the applications, yes. We cannot issue a ballot until we have the application on file. We've checked the information on it and checked the signature.
Okay. So from what you have witnessed with your own eyes, Melanie Coon's eyes, are the laws enforced differently than how they are written when it pertains to election laws?
I believe that election statute is purposely vague. They don't want to hinder the people that need to adhere to it. They give you a direction you need to take. They let you know what goal you're trying to reach, and they don't tie your hands as far as how you get there generally. And so I think that they are administered to everyone equally. I think because there's a lot of different methodology, maybe different people seeing it at different locations, they believe it's different because perhaps the clerk has a different method of getting to the same end.
Okay. So there's certain things, though, out there that people have talked about, people that believe that there was mass election fraud that say, so some of these lack of, consistencies between clerks, township clerks, county clerks, whatever. So maybe that's what they are, they're thinking is fraud. Is that a possibility? I mean,
I would imagine if you just took a drive on election day into 5 different counties, you're probably going to see 5 different methods for at least 3 procedures during the day. Mm-hmm. And some of it may look fraudulent, but a lot of people don't really know what the processes that need to be done on election day. And so it can be difficult for them to judge. It may look, to them like that's not how that should be done. But I mean, I can't swear to the fact that there's no fraud, because if somebody wants to commit fraud, they will. But I feel like it's just an interpretation issue. And I think that people, if they do have these concerns, I think that maybe they should become precinct inspectors, spend more time on election day working the process.
Which has happened, right?
Yes,
that has increased.
We've had some increases, yes.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the, so you said there's some flexibility in there. Do you think there should be less?
I don't think any of our jurisdictions would be opposed to a literal checklist. I don't think they would be opposed to that. They are all trained. Again, they're trained how to start, what they need to get to. And so they do have, they have a lot of leeway in how they can do that. And I think that's probably because I don't think they want to be too rigid on the clerks and make it so hard for them to do everything that we don't have people applying to to become clerks, because I know there are a lot of clerks out there that are really hesitant on continuing with all the new changes.
Okay. What proven fraudulent activity in recent elections are you aware of?
I haven't seen any compelling literature on proof that there was fraud. And I know the state hasn't sanctioned any kind of specific audits that have proven fraud. If they had, we wouldn't be using these systems anymore.
Okay. You haven't seen it yourself with your own eyes any fraud or maybe secondhand in county that you feel like? I mean, because even in Oceana County, there has been some, as you are aware of, there has been some accusations that fraud has taken place in Oceana County.
Yes.
In certain precincts.
I
guess, what do you... go ahead. Sorry.
In our county, I have not witnessed any kind of activity that I would deem fraudulent. I can't think of any time I have seen it happen. But when you're within the election night system and you know they have to balance everything, I feel very confident that there are enough checks and balances in place that we're making them account for every ballot. If they were not accounting for every ballot, because I know in some larger elections, ballot containers have disappeared, supposedly, with ballots in it, that couldn't happen in our county because we would be after them to prove where they went.
Okay. So in 2020 or 2022, you have people that come to the clerk's office with certain complaints about activity that they saw. Can you maybe address a couple specifics? And of course, you don't want to talk about who that was or anything like that, but maybe specific complaints or observations that people had. They said, "Hey, I witnessed fraud," and they talked about it, what it was. Can you give us some stories?
We had Newfield Township, I think, was lucky because they had a lot of people there to observe. And I know there were some things that were brought to our attention that the voters or constituents, they did not like how it was done. And they felt, there was maybe a security breach. I know there were some issues at the e-poll book table. They didn't maybe like how some of the things were being done. They did bring those to our attention, and we would love that. If they see something, they should say something. I mean, I know that's a catchphrase now, but they really should, because we need to know if something is happening there. But again, I think it's more methodology. I think it's how the individual chair people in the polling place are having the workers do it. I don't think they're breaking any rules.
Okay.
They just do some steps differently than another jurisdiction.
Was it proven to be fraudulent? Did you guys find any evidence of that?
No, there was, I believe they were processing AV ballots. The one complaint was AV ballots, the way they were processing them. And they felt that the privacy or secrecy of the ballot was being exposed because of the way they were processing them. They generally process no less than 10 at a time. They open them all up and they lay them down. So you really don't know whose is whose. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, they could be laying face up, and it doesn't matter because nobody knows whose they belong to. I mean, it's okay to have them laying there in a stack so you can process them.
Okay.
I know that was one of the issues.
Okay. Any others you feel compelled to share, or is that good?
We had a considerable amount, and they did bring them to our attention. I don't recall any one of them. Well, there was an issue about making the tabulator tape available election night. And that does, some of the jurisdictions post it on the door. So whoever would like to see that tabulator tape can do so. I believe there was a jurisdiction that withheld that tape from some challengers on the floor. And we did have a discussion about that.
Okay. Is that against the statute?
They are, yes. They should be making that available.
Okay. How about, what's the difference? And I actually got to go backwards here about Election Day. Challengers and poll watchers. And if people want to get involved, I'll even broaden the question a little bit. If people want to get involved, they can be a challenger or a poll watcher, yes. Or they can even work the election, right?
They can. They can be an inspector.
Yeah. So what are the roles of each of those? Or what was each one of those, for those titles, what's their role?
A poll, let's see here. The poll watcher, in my opinion, is limited. They're limited to the public viewing area. I did just learn that they can ask to see the electronic poll book, but the chairperson or challenger liaison can deny that because generally they've got too many voters in line, and so they can't have them looking at that and stop the voter flow. But that to be a poll watcher, you can just show up. If there's room in the public viewing area, you may sit there.
Doesn't take any training?
No, you can sit there and observe all the different stations.
But there's rules for them, right?
They can't speak to voters. They can't touch any election material. So it's just, I think I'd rather be a challenger if I was going to go.
So they have more authority, right? That's from what I read.
Yes, a challenger has more authority. They can be on the floor. They can stand behind the e-poll book and watch them process voters through that. They cannot touch voting material as well. That's still prohibited. But they can ask questions of the inspectors or the challenger liaison.
What if the inspector doesn't want to answer the questions, or they're really busy? There's a long line. They're required to answer those?
They really should make time. With the increased amount of voters in this last few elections, it's really important to run them through because some of our jurisdictions don't have the space and people are waiting in lines, out the doorway. And so to keep the voting moving, they'd have to put it off probably to a different time, but there's usually a time during the day when they could answer those questions.
And reasonable people can oftentimes come to a common place. Okay, would you say that the laws as written make it easy to vote and hard to cheat? And if not, what laws, or we talked about this a little bit. I'll stop with that question. Would you say the way they're written right now make it easy to vote and hard to cheat?
I think that they have come to a point where they do make it easy to vote. I think the availability, the local clerks have increased the hours they're available to do AVs for people that, are going to be out of town or need an AV for another reason. So I think it's very accessible for people to get a ballot. If somebody's going to cheat, they're going to cheat. We do have safeguards in place, and we do the absolute best we can, but there are people out there that, they're out to commit fraud or cheat.
Yeah. And so so would you say the easier it is to vote, the easier it is to cheat?
I don't really think so. I think that, for instance, if ballots went missing, you'd have to have a lot of people in on this activity to actually have it work, because there are levels of authority within the county that look at the material once you bring it in after election night. So, I think I just lost my train of thought there.
That's okay. I was asking, easier to vote does that make it easier to cheat?
I don't think so. I really don't. We're checking signatures. We know what addresses they've used. So no, I think it does make it easier. I'm hoping that it doesn't make it easier to cheat. We haven't seen that.
Okay. So there's some people out there that probably just cringe at you saying that there's going to be people that are going to cheat. If they want to cheat hard enough, if they want to try hard enough, they can succeed. There's going to be people that are just angry about that comment, even not at you, but angry that people would do that. And they would even say, well, that shows that the election was stolen, or that shows, in 2020 specifically, that's the big one that people talk about. What would you say to somebody that is angry, that would be angry about that?
I think we should have feelings about fraud. We are very diligent in our county about them completing all their paperwork correctly. We are checking their ballot summaries. We're checking their numbers of ballots. We're asking them to prove all of their numbers. Again, okay, I'm getting tired because I'm losing my voice.
That's okay.
I start talking.
That's okay. Just maybe, what I'm asking you about is the frustration that people feel towards the mass fraud, potential mass, the stealing of the election, that it could be easy to cheat, just to maybe, what do we say to those, what do you say to those people?
I think I feel for them because it's frustrating even for us to think that there are people out there that are altering the votes. I mean, this is a basic right that we have, and we should be able to do that and trust that those that are handling the ballots, processing the ballots, are doing it correctly. There are a lot of digital aspects now to elections where it could happen, but I mean, basically, it's simply counting those ovals or the X's or, whatever method they use on their ballots. It should be very simple. And all of the different aspects as far as some people modem in results. We do not in our county. And there could be a possibility. But I think those people that do believe that there's been fraud, I think they should ask questions. I think they should become involved. And hopefully, once they do that in their own county, they would feel more comfortable, at least about our county. We're a smaller county. So, our township clerks know a lot of the people that are coming in to vote. We're not like these large jurisdictions in Kent and Wayne, who they may not know 100 of the voters in line.
Right. So we'll wrap up with this question because it looks like we don't have anybody else online to ask a question. If you want to ask a question, you want to get in real soon here because we're about to wrap up. So in your opinion, what election laws need to be put into place? So I'll say kind of two-sided. So what laws give more room for that we currently have in place, give more room for questionable potential fraudulent activity, and then countering that. So then what laws what should be put in place to decrease the amount of potential fraudulent activity?
I don't move in circles where we talk a lot of election law. I think at this point, because we do have so much contention, allegation of fraud, and some very passionate opinions about elections these days, I think maybe even with this last election, they've initiated a whole bunch of things with the proposals that we passed that will make it challenging, to maintain the security level that we're looking for. I would like us to focus more on really doing everything according to the laws that are written right now. And once people feel comfortable with that, then we can look at maybe, voting online.
And you said earlier too that maybe would you advocate more for a checklist, like not so much ambiguity for and freedom for each county clerk or township clerk, but a checklist. You would advocate for something like that?
I don't think our local jurisdictions would be opposed. They have so many things that come up on election day that they have to deal with and call the state on. I think it might be nice to have that consistency.
Absolutely. Well, good. All right. So my last question to you. If I were to interview someone next week who is certain that the election was stolen, like where, Donald Trump really should have won in 2020 or in 2022 for that matter, stolen in any way, what question would you think that I should ask them?
I have a curious mind, and I would like to see, how it was done. I mean, if someone is truly getting into any voting equipment, I would love to see how that's done. I'd like to have it on CNN so they show all of us, what's happening, why our security measures aren't holding up the way we expect them to. I think they really do need to have some individual proof. I know a lot of people feel they do. They've read articles, they've went to conferences, they've spoken to a lot of people, and it's fine to have those feelings and beliefs, but I think they really should have more of a personal experience with it. before they're certain that fraud has been committed.
Okay. Well, great. Well, Melanie, thank you for being in the hot seat here for 50 minutes or so, 54 minutes. Man, this has been good, though. It's been great. Well, I hope that you join us next week, next Thursday, when we're gonna talk about labor unions and with a guy by the name of Micah Perkins. And I hope that you submit your questions in the YouTube comment section, the chat box, and make your comments so I can act as your proxy. So again, don't forget to subscribe and click the little notification button, the little bell, so you can get notified when we film our next and record our next the proxy. See you next time, and I hope that you build bridges and tear down walls.